How's everybody doing this afternoon? Glad you could make it. Yes, fantastic. Love the energy. My last front row was full of energy too, so I like how this is shaping up.
We're down the second row.
Woo! And the second row. You guys are repeat too. Thank you. They stuck around, so competitive rows. We like the engagement and are very, very thankful for you all for joining us for our 9th annual Startup Boston Week. Our mission with this conference is simple. Second row. I'm just kidding. Our mission with this conference is simple: to bring together the entire startup community across every industry, department, and funding stage. Startup Boston exists to connect, educate, and celebrate this ecosystem by serving as your trusted, unbiased guide to resources. Thank you, we've got extras. Now you guys will be drowning. We want to serve you with the best resources available to you that can help you start and scale your startup or your team. My name is Elena Lobianco. I'm a consultant with TriNet, where we support startups and growing businesses with their HR infrastructure so they can scale confidently and compliantly. I will be your hostess this afternoon. Before we dive in, I do want to give a huge thank you to Suffolk University for hosting us. They have generously partnered with us for the last 3 years, providing this space in kind because of their deep commitment to supporting Boston's startup community. If you are interested in exploring entrepreneurship, they do offer a number of opportunities and programs. They're tabling right upstairs on the 5th floor in the vendor hall. Be sure to stop by their table to see how they can support you and your journey and how you might get involved with supporting their entrepreneurial students as well. We have a fantastic panel in store for you today, AI and People Ops. So without further ado, I will hand it over to our wonderful moderator to kick things off. Thank you, guys. Make some noise for our panelists, and we'll get into it.
Thank you. I like that. We're going to get into it today. You guys ready to get into it?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. So if you're here in this session, then I'm sure you are aware of People Ops, right? But I do think it's worth mentioning, right? When we think startup, we think technology, we think building products. But who builds the technology, right? It's the people. And if you read the literature on building a business, building a startup, from good to great to whatever you're reading, the message is always the same. You have to build the right team, whether it's your founding team, your funders, your leadership, your early hires, or the people that you bring on to grow your organization. Those are the people who are going to make you competitive or not. And I like to think of People Ops as like, yes, people like work for companies, but People Ops make sure that the company is working for the people so they could do their best work, thrive, and succeed. So firstly, just thank you everybody for being here, for thinking that this is a really important topic. I think it's super important for the competitiveness of your startups. And thank you to our panel here. So Startup Boston has done a great job in assembling a panel that has diverse experience and skills from startups and consulting and everything in between. So with that said, I'm going to start with Jen. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jen Paxton. I am currently the VP of People and Talent at a company called Roofer. We're about 226 people. We're completely remote and completely global. So we're in, I think, 7 or 8 different countries at this point. And so I lead all of People and Talent.
Thank you. Felicia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Felicia Jadzak. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the co-founder and co-CEO of an organization called Inclusion Geeks, formerly known as She Geeks Out. And so for a lot of you in the Boston area, you may remember us pre-pandemic as She Geeks Out. We are still technically She Geeks Out, but doing business now as Inclusion Geeks. We are a workplace consulting organization, and we consult with individuals and companies across all different industries, shapes, and sizes. My particular focus is on building better, equitable workspaces so that people can really thrive and do their best. We are a small business. We've been around for over 10 years now, and we are a small company as well, fully remote as well.
Thank you. And Jason?
Hey, everybody. Jason Lavender, co-founder and CEO of a company called Electives. Fully remote, but we do have a pretty big relative to our employee base focus in Boston. The company is focused on modern learning and development. So we don't have a people ops team internally, but all of our clients are typically people ops leaders or L&D leaders. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. So how many of you have already attended a session in Startup? Okay. All right, most people. Okay. So we're going to be doing a format that's very similar. I've got some questions. The panelists are going to grapple with those questions. And at the end, we're going to have your questions. And so please, if a topic really grabs you, make some notes, and we're going to get into it as a group towards the end. So with that being said, did anybody notice the article? I think it came out like this week from Atlantic. It's called Finding a Job is Hell. Anyone see this, right? Yes, finding a job is hell. So, in that article, they do cover a lot of topics, but one of the themes is essentially that candidates are using AI in a lot of different ways to generate resumes and automate the process of applying, and companies are using AI as well. And despite all this amazing technology, both sides are more frustrated than ever. So, with this context, my question to the panel is, in this era where candidate and employer are both using AI, what perspective do you have for the startup employer on how they should be thinking about using AI and, in particular, preserving the candidate experience? So, do we have a taker?
Want to
I'll
start?
start first.
Sure.
Yeah.
Please.
It was a new question you threw at us today, which
I know.
I'm excited about. We didn't plan who's going to go first. So it definitely depends on your company culture to start with, but at least from our perspective at Roofer, we lean toward the transparency side. So we actually have an AI statement of how we would like candidates to use AI in the interview process, and also how we use AI. We use Greenhouse for our applicant tracking system, so that does filter resumes for us to be more efficient, but also that doesn't completely knock out people as well. So we're trying to make sure that we're being very honest with the candidates on that side. And then candidate experience is just very, very important to us. So we still get back to every single candidate, which has been helpful, I think, with the AI side, because we've been able to automate a few more of those emails that go out to people that are not a good fit. Yeah, trying to be no ghosting. Yeah, not perfect, but we're trying.
So, do you recall, what made you establish this? Because I'm sure a year or two ago,
Yeah.
it wasn't like #1 priority, let's put our AI policy on the website.
I mean, there's been a lot of case law for that. So I think that one part of our company is we want to make sure that we're being very honest. But even just with our candidate experience in general, from the very first phone conversation you have, you know exactly what the process is going to be and who you're going to get to meet with, and really how long you should budget. We just don't want to get those gotcha moments for candidates either.
Yeah,
So,
setting the expectations
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah, so it's just really layering on that level of transparency that we can provide as much as possible. And then I also think candidates are also kind of unsure, can I use AI? Can I not use AI? And so we're saying, yeah, you can use AI for this, because you most likely are going to use AI in your job. So we want to see,
interesting.
your skills and how you can leverage it.
Excellent, thank you. Any panelists have something they want to add or a new perspective?
I'll just pile on a little bit. I think I didn't see the article, but I can say from a hiring perspective, hiring also kind of feels like hell too. We're not hiring at a rapid pace, but we posted a client success manager job just a week ago, and we had 1,600 applicants within the first 4 days, which is exciting. And we'd all like to say
1,604 days.
yes.
Got it.
And we all were like, oh, this is great. Everybody wants to come work at electives. There's just a volume of candidates who are actively looking. And from an AI perspective, you can kind of tell even from a cover letter when people are using AI, they're referencing every single point that was in the job description, which initially you're like, wow, they might be a perfect match. But then as you read through it, you start to realize that, clearly some tools have been used to kind of automate this. So you can see through it. I would say from a tools perspective, we haven't done AI phone screens or anything like that. It's still a very human experience. There is a percentage of candidates that may not be a good fit just from kind of a resume perspective, but all of our kind of human conversations are still human. To Jen's point, we do try to automate So almost every note back, just in terms of we have your application, we see you, even if the person's not a good fit. So there is more and more tools coming up, but we just haven't found the one to really kind of fit our culture and brand.
This is probably a very controversial topic, but like the AI like recruiter bot, I don't think I'm going to be a fan of it. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, yeah, same here, because I think that to answer this question, to add to what my fellow panelists have said, and to go back to your original question, Ryan, I think the answer to that and a lot of other questions that we're going to be asked here today are, it depends. And I think it depends on the individuals who are candidates. It depends on individuals who are in decision-making positions at different organizations. And it also depends on organization level, how companies, startups, or otherwise are starting to think about how they want to use AI, what the considerations are, if they had the appetite to use a recruiter bot, for example, or not, the human touch, as Jason and both Jen have mentioned. And I think that from my perspective as an outside consultant, I'm seeing a lot of candidates, especially reporting on places like LinkedIn and other spaces, that they are choosing to decline interviewing with companies where they get on that first initial phone screening and it's an AI, or it's not
Hello
a
and
human
welcome to
being.
Movie Phone.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, and so I think, like, obviously, to the point of the article, it is a very, very tough time right now as far as hiring goes. So there will probably always be some candidate that doesn't care or can't care because they need the job in some capacity. So I think that's where, from an organizational standpoint, and we're going to talk more about this, I know, but I think that's where it's really on the decision makers and the companies who are deciding whether or not to use these tools and how to use these tools, how they want to put that out there. Because if they, if we all say we don't care, we're going to use an AI tool because it's going to make our lives easier. Because I've been there, Jason, like having over 1,000 applicants to one job in a matter of days is wild. And I've truly been there. And we were there when we did not have AI tools to help with that. And it's a huge task. And this is just becoming more and more prevalent as we're seeing the job market shrinking and industries are vanishing, partially because of AI. So automation is here. It's a very helpful tool, but it's really the human piece comes into it because we're building these tools, we're choosing how to use these tools, and we get to make the decisions on how does this impact not just outside candidates, but to your point, Jen, when people come into the organization, are we going to continue to use these tools in that way? How does that look, and what does that mean for someone who may or may not have differing levels of skills with these different tools? Because it's also changing very quickly day by day.
Absolutely. On the kind of diversity of perspective, something that I just heard that I thought was fascinating is you were saying something like, we know that you're using these tools, or you will use these tools in the job. So we're going to be clear with you about our expectations in the process, because I think sometimes people look at candidates using AI as like fakers or something like that, right? Like, but actually you're saying no. Like, let's be clear about it. But then you had this thing of like, oh, but we're seeing through it or something like that, right? There's some stigma to it. But I think it's interesting to see that the companies themselves have different attitudes towards this technology and different roles. And so it gets back to it depends. Okay, another question here. So I work in engineering, and I think engineering might be on the front line of this, but I think other jobs are experiencing this too. It's a new phenomenon where folks who do this sort of work are expected or even mandated to use AI in their work, or even judged on like how well do they use it, right? Now, on one hand, you could see this as a kind of a positive if you view AI as like, yeah, this is a tool that can make a person more productive. Why wouldn't people use this tool, right? On the other hand, it's pretty novel for like the board of directors or the CEO to suddenly have a really strong perspective on what experts in their company, who are the expert practitioners, what tools and approaches and processes that they would use, that they're the experts of. So with that framing, what are your current thinking about companies and how they use AI and the sort of guidance that they provide to their own people in terms of correct usage, the importance of learning it, where not to use it, however you want to take this? And you were last, Felicia. So let's start with you, Felicia.
Sure, happy to jump in first on this one. So I think that so my belief, broadly speaking, is AI is a tool, just like a lot of other tools that we have available to us. Now, there's obviously a lot more to that. It's not just enough to say it's just a tool, because of course it's reshaping our society as we speak. But it is a tool, and it is a tool that is created by humans. And so the other thing I want to mention too before I continue on is that, a lot of times when we see people say, oh, well, this is, AI generated, or the M dash, right? Like, I'm a literature major, and I'm so upset that the M dash has now been corrupted, essentially, because I'm like, guess what? AI is very prevalent in using M dashes because humans use M dashes, and it's a great tool to use when you're writing. Side rant aside. The reason I say it's a tool, and why it's something that we really want to keep that in mind, is because I do think that individuals and organizations that are not using AI or are not keeping abreast with how it's evolving and what is available will ultimately fall behind in some capacity. Now, it depends on the industry, it depends on the organization, it depends on the kind of work that we're all doing. It may not be as significant in certain industries as in others, but especially in the startup world, a lot of us are, we're using computers, we're in front of screens every day, we're building code, we're doing things like that. We're not necessarily like, we're not carpenters or hammering things, right? Which is a little bit of a different way of being in the world and working. And so if you are someone who's thinking about it, even if you don't want to use these tools, I think it behooves us all to understand them. Because if we can understand them, then we won't be left behind when we have these considerations of, does someone truly have a skill set that we're looking for? Or did they plug in the job description into an LLM and they just are copying and pasting what was spit out at them, right? We were talking before this panel started around the importance of critical thinking. And so that to me is how I think about it. Like, AI is a tool, but critical thinking is part of that. That is what we as humans continue to bring to the table. And we built this tool, and we should be able to use this tool, but it doesn't mean that we need to replace ourselves with this tool. So generally speaking, I would say my thought process is that if you don't like AI, that's totally fine. If you are anti-using it, totally fine. But we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we ignore the rapid pace at which it is transforming our world, and if we ignore what it is and how to think about it and how to use it and what opportunities there are. Because as much as I have my qualms about it, I also can recognize that there's a lot of benefits to it, and I do use AI on a daily basis. So it is it can be a bit of a catch-22 there, but I do think it's important to stay abreast of what it is so that we don't get left behind.
So I think we're gonna have everybody respond to this. But Jen, I saw like the wheels turning over there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I wrote down two things because it was percolating inside me. I couldn't help it. So I think one thing that you mentioned that Felicia also touched on was, CEOs and leaders really understanding the capacity of the role. Like, can we solve everything with AI? Probably not. I mean, again, to Felicia's point, like, AI is a tool, right? But I think that there's a balance between, the CEO or the board coming down and saying, why can't they just do this with AI? Like, why can't you just make the content with AI? And it's, yes, you can have content with AI, but then you have to have a human person look it over, because humans are reading it and comprehending it and taking it in. And the thing that the AI is going to write might not just resonate with one human if you don't have that human filter that it gets put onto. So I think that there's definitely ways that AI is going to up level a lot of teams. I was talking with a CPO earlier this week. There we go, time. Earlier this week, and she was mentioning that her comp analyst came to her and said, I'm pretty sure AI is going to take over my job. I want to understand, what can I do? And I think that a lot of people are probably thinking about that now, of, if I'm an analyst or if I'm in a role that is synthesizing a lot of data, they're already kind of seeing it happen. So they're trying to hopefully get ahead of it and being proactive, because they still want to use AI, but they need to figure out, like, how does the skeleton of their job actually change? Because it is going to change. I mean, even the skeleton of my job has rapidly changed over the last few years.
It seems that your organization is sort of AI positive, perhaps.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, had you given consideration maybe to some of the roles that would be likely to be reduced, and like for those people, how they can plug into different roles? Like, is there any type of planning around like retaining some people who are great people who happen to be in a part of the workforce that is more susceptible to this type of automation?
Yeah, still early days for sure,
Yes.
but we've already started the career mapping conversations that are happening. I'm also going through headcount planning now. I'm sure a lot of people that are in people ops are going through that whole negotiation at this moment, and we're trying to figure out how many people do we actually need to add to the role, because we might not add as many people to a department than we used to because of AI. And if we can actually upskill the people on the team, and that's kind of our hope is we can do that, then we wouldn't have to add another body that, just clicked something back and forth.
Got it. Now, Jason, I think you got a dual perspective here, right? Because obviously you founded your company, and you're probably on the policy setting side of this, but you also provide a service to companies related to training. So this might be, I don't know, a hot area of professional development. So yeah, we want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, Felicia uses the word care, and we often talk about like this 2x2 matrix where it's care and complexity. And I think a lot of times this question of like, will AI replace this job or this task? It kind of seems like a binary question of like, yes, it will, or no, it won't. And our view is actually there's just kind of a scale of how much of that task or that role AI could take. And when we look at it from a care and complexity perspective, there's a lot of tasks that are actually quite easy, but there is a ton of care that go into them. Jen made the point on an email. I could probably put in, can you write an email to Jen about, some strategy? But I really care about how that email gets received. So I want to
do that, full disclosure.
So I still want to be in that loop. There's other tasks that could take hours or months, and AI could take us from 0 to 40, and then we still have humans on that last 60%. So in my mind, it's, depending on how much you care about that task and that initiative and how complex it is, AI is going to take out some chunk of that. But I don't think it's always just yes or no, depending on the role or the person or the task.
Can I add one more thing? Actually, the other thing that I want to add into the mix here is the fact that AI is not perfect and it can lie to us as well. So that's where the human piece is really, really critical, because as we were talking before this panel, we've all had experiences where we plug something in and gotten an answer back and it's wrong or untrue or just made up. So that's where the human piece and, with the conversation around upskilling and the care piece is really all part of that as well, because we can't just blindly trust AI for everything, because the other thing to remember is that, again, it's built off of data sets, and the data is only, or the answers are only as good as the data that we put in. And spoiler alert, the data is not always great that we put in to build these tools. And so we have to keep that in mind. And that, to my mind, is also where the human element is still critical. It may change, and it probably will change in the future, and maybe that percentage will be different or it'll be completely wiped out. But for right now, we still really, really need human checks on what we're getting out of these requests and these queries and these answers, so that we don't just go down the wrong pathway because a machine decided that it sounded good and it wasn't actually.
What an amazing segue. You said going down the wrong pathway, right? So you may have also heard about a fabulous company called Workday. And Workday is currently being sued by, I believe I'm not an expert on the case, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's some sort of a class action about discrimination. And it's gone through multiple stages, and it's keeps going. And the allegation is essentially that AI or some form of AI was used not only to sort of filter and sort resumes, but to actually reject candidates. I believe there's a particular candidate who has what he believes is, what the lawyers believe is a lot of compelling evidence of a pattern of discrimination. Now, what makes the Workday thing more nuanced is it's not like they were just doing this for their own hiring. Workday is a software platform that does a lot of things, including helping other companies with their hiring who they were using this tool. And I think the current state is that there was some kind of determination that any company that was using that tool during a certain period may have some sort of like legal exposure to this. So in the backdrop of the legal risk of AI, I think, people ops are probably being brought into discussions about what are the risks of using AI, where are the biggest sort of opportunities, but where do we have to be cautious? And I'm curious about perspectives on AI risk. And I don't know, you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure, yeah. This comes up from a training perspective, kind of externally with clients more than internally at electives right now. But I think the main thing that comes to mind, and sometimes I compare AI to like when calculators first came out or when Microsoft Excel first came out. Like there is the legal documentation, ethical standards, everything. There's also kind of a understanding, to Felicia's point, like understanding what is coming out of the recommendations, the prompts, the tools, et cetera. And there's a little bit of, I don't want to say common sense, but there's you can't trust everything that comes out. And so from a risk perspective, a lot of the training we talk about is how do you actually use these tools and how do you understand if you're heading in the right direction? Because I think that's probably the biggest risk, is just assuming what you get on the surface is going to be the answer. So that's kind of where I would start. The second thing, and this is probably going to be a continuous pattern, but the human in the loop is just so important. There's two books that I always recommend, even before AI became kind of what it is today. And I was a math major undergrad, so these are kind of nerdy book recommendations, but one of them is called Weapons of Math Destruction. And it's understanding how algorithms really do a lot of bad things in the world before AI. The other one, I think it's called Invisible Women, but that's all about algorithms and the bias from a gender perspective. And again, it's just from a training perspective, there's so much learning that can be had outside of the technical nature of AI, but really understanding kind of what goes into the system. How does an LLM work? Is this right? Is there like a sniff test that we can do? I think all of that is just as important as being able to prompt engineer, as an example.
So you talked a bit about, things come out of it and what do we do with it? How do we judge it? But there's other dimensions like what goes into it. And I'm curious, Felicia, if you could give us some of the other dimensions of risk or ethical concern with LLMs in particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, there's two sides to every coin, right? So for all the amazing things that AI can provide us, there's also a lot of risk and negative aspects to it. And since we're doing book recommendations, another book which I'll recommend, which is, again, it was sort of pre all of this AI explosion, but it's a really amazing book called Algorithms of Oppression, and I highly recommend it to everyone. It kind of touches on a lot of the early stuff that goes into the discussion that we're having today. But, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the tools are only as good as what we put into them. So there is a lot of studies, and there's just so much research that's starting to come out just now, because this is still an emerging field and we're just now starting to fully grasp a lot of the complexity. But there's a lot of research that shows that when we're using AI tools for hiring, for example, that the data sets are predicating or sort of influencing the users to prefer men over women. We're also seeing that with age, and I think that was a big element of the Workday lawsuit around age discrimination. And as you know, we have a lot of really robust protections for older workers, especially here in the US, and so that's a huge issue. The other thing, which I think Jason touched on a little bit too, and we have some overlap in how our organizations work here, is that if you are working with sensitive data or with clients' data, and you're plugging that into your ChatGPT or your Claude or whatever else you're using, we actually don't know what is going to happen to that data. And so we don't have full control or even full transparency over how that information gets used in the future. There's been a lot of conversation around the threat of exposing queries and data sets and information that's plugged in, where theoretically tomorrow we could all wake up and have, all of our most private ChatGPT questions put out there for everyone to see. I don't know if that would happen, but it's definitely possible. So, we have to be aware of that. And a lot of organizations, especially those who are using more sensitive data or are more mindful of this, are trying to keep their sandbox more private, basically. But, again, if we're training up our employees and we're encouraging them to use these tools, and then they go off and they, copy a file over and they upload it into ChatGPT on their own time or their own computer, that might expose the company to, to risks that we didn't ever anticipate. And so that's a huge thing, which is still very much nebulous. It's in development. We don't really, I think, fully understand the downside to what could happen if all of this is out there. I'll also mention really briefly, and it's not directly related to people ops, but I think it's sort of all tied together, that a lot of organizations, like for example BetterHelp, mental health is an area that is starting to look to AI, and we're starting to see that this is very dangerous because the AI tools, the ChatGPTs, whatever it is, they're giving answers or giving advice to people that is dangerous, that is driving them to suicide, that is, again, exposing HIPAA violations. So there's so much to be aware of here around this idea of what the risk is. And the other thing is that everyone's risk tolerance is going to be different. So for me as a consultant, I'm okay with, chatting away to my ChatGPT and saying, hey, I'm building a training on XYZ. Can you help me? This is how I use AI in a lot of my day-to-day. I said, can you help me come up with a better flow for an hour-long webinar? I'm trying to get these points involved. I want to do this. I want to have 15 minutes for Q&A. And that's been hugely beneficial. But if I then go in and I upload a huge file from a client that's got tons of sensitive employee data or feedback surveys or things like that, and I plug that in, that's a different level of engagement. And, the clients may not know what's happening. And do they care? Do they want that? Do they have their own policies? This is an evolving field that we're going to see more and more. So I think the Workday lawsuit is sort of the first. I think there will be more to come, and we do not have full understanding or protections in this area yet.
Yeah, I would maybe add also, it's such a tool that's so ubiquitous, right? That I think for the everyday user, which is everyone, it feels pretty safe, right? But as you're saying, it just takes 2 seconds to share something, and once you've put it in there, you don't know what's happening next. Jen, did you want to add anything to this?
I think the permission side of it keeps me up at night. But I think that I put in a lot of feedback. So the way I use ChatGPT is I have a folder on each of my direct reports, and I put in feedback that I've given them. It's only with their first name, but feedback I've given them. I'm planned to have them synthesize the data of all the feedback I gave them at the end of the year. And when you were talking about that, Felicia, I was like, oh, I hope that never becomes completely public to anybody else but the employee. It's almost like if your HRIS data got leaked somewhere, I don't that's, I think there's probably a lot more that we don't know about that side of it. Now, am I going to stop doing it? No. But I am cognizant of the exact thing I put in, right? I don't put in last names. I put in nicknames or something on those ends, right? So I think that there's ways for you to be smart about it and maybe safeguard yourself from it. I'm also really fascinated about other countries' case laws that are going to happen, because thinking about just GDPR with resumes in your ATS, I'm sure they have more policies that they're going to be creating, and I want us to be as proactive as possible on those as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I ask a sensitive question, I always say, I'm asking for a friend, and I think that gives me some legal.
You don't ask it in incognito mode?
I'm in, come on, who are you talking to here? A lot of our conversation has dipped into sort of the negative or the cautions, right? But I think you were kind of really getting at a really positive use there. As a manager, a lot of times it's a big job to synthesize all this feedback and information that you have about successes and challenges and growth areas and everything. And I would say it is pretty powerful to be able to take unstructured information from different files, different formats, put it into this tool, get something out, and you work with that person, so you're reviewing it and probably able to have better one-on-one conversations about growth areas or successes than you were able to have maybe with your direct reports in the past, because you're busy and it's a lot of work and you do the best you can, right? So as a sort of transition here, what are some of the positive areas specifically in people ops, where we see opportunities, whether it's with a particular tool, or I think you were describing essentially kind of like a method.
Yeah, well, so like that one is for performance reviews and actually helping managers to, as you mentioned, kind of like that nebulousness in their head, like and put it into different feedback buckets of, if I've given this person this amount of feedback before, what would I do in a performance review? Like, what would I say if this is a competency, this is the competency in this one, right? So you could do that. I mean, I use it for analyzing a lot of data. Again, trying to anonymize it as much as possible, but we just did a benefit survey, and so we asked employees to stack rank different benefits offerings that we wanted to increase, or if we wanted to add in. And if you've ever gone through like a Google form and tried to synthesize that data on your own, or like look at the charts that they put together, it's complete hot garbage. So if you can copy and paste it in ChatGPT and say, I want the top 3, choices of employees, that saved me hours of just painstakingly looking at charts and trying to put it together. Or I think one time I actually like checked everybody off on a piece of paper. That was archaic. Never want to do that again. So those are the really huge ones I do. And then I'll also use it for predicting turnover and flight risk.
Predicting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more?
Yeah. So
That's interesting. Okay.
I started this in an Excel spreadsheet to start with, because there were lots of different kind of cross-functional kind of factors that you could put in, of like, how much time are they taking off? So is there like a PTO or an absenteeism kind of thing? Are they going to company events? What was their last performance review rating for them? When was the last time they got a promotion or a raise? Getting their manager data as well, because my HRBPs will meet with their manager. So plop all of that into ChatGPT and be like, what's the likelihood of this person maybe leaving for, in 6 months? Why would they leave? And there's also like employee like pulse survey sentiment that we can find, but it's more anonymized, so it's not as easy to do. So you'd put in like the team specific stuff.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Any other wins?
Yeah, there's a lot of wins. You're right. It did go kind of negative fast.
Right?
Two that come to mind, and this is more from a product perspective, but I think the outcome is helpful. So our platform was always focused on live learning. We're kind of big believers in human interaction. About a year ago, and we had really heard for years that people wanted to role play and practice things, and that was pretty common. But role playing could be awkward. If you've ever done like a sales role play, you have 15 peers looking at you and you're like, now I feel like I'm acting and I'm not actually like being myself. So we knew role plays were a helpful way to develop and grow. But doing that with people is hard to scale. So our team built all these different AI simulations where people can practice giving hard feedback, can practice a sales call, can practice an interview. We're not having them like just interview with the AI, but it's a huge confidence boost in terms of, I think a lot of people, and we've all been in these shoes, I'm sure, is like, I can give this difficult feedback. And the moment you sit down and have the conversation, it's like, your heart starts racing and you're kind of like saying the wrong thing. So now
Great job.
Simulations are a perfect way to just get the words out of your mouth, try something, get a report card back, and then see how it goes from there. So that's been a win. And then on the more kind of strategic side, there used to be a part of our process that would take months. And that was typically when a client would come to us and say, we need to improve our managers. And we're like, okay, let's unpack that. It became a lot of kind of consultative, strategic conversations. We'd whiteboard, we'd have sticky notes, and would ultimately over months design a manager training program, across a cohort of people. Now we've built an AI learning strategy tool that in that kind of spectrum view gets us 0 to 70 really fast. We still have to have that consultative conversation, make sure it's the right instructors, the right competencies, but it saves months of just back and forth and calendaring and even trying to articulate the problem sometimes is really challenging. So there's been tons of wins, and we keep, we're also AI forward in terms of just encouraging both our employees to use it, but also our clients as well.
Cool. We got Felicia.
I'll just add in addition to everything else that folks have said. So, One of the big positives for AI is it does allow us to automate. And so, for example, I did mention that, humans are biased and we can build things like AI tools that we build our biases in. But on the other side of that coin, we can use AI to try to remove bias from processes and procedures. So, for example, hiring is a great example to look at because one of the things that does tend to bias hiring managers, recruiters, folks along the way is looking at things like names, how old they are, date that they graduated from a higher university or education, things like that. So you can use an AI tool to remove identifying information really quickly, whereas before you'd have like an intern or a low-level employee sit there and do that, manually hours and hours on end. And so yes, maybe that person's job is not to do that anymore, but it allows us to very quickly remove that kind of identifying information from a process like that. Other things that can help with can be with things like performance evaluation. One of the things that I always tell my clients when I talk about things like how are we more inclusive, how are we more equitable in these kinds of processes, is that we want, like, sometimes standardization is actually really beneficial. And so making sure that you're using a tool that's AI generated to help with standardizing your performance reviews, things like that. And then the other thing, which is really interesting that I'll be honest, I haven't looked too much into right now, but I have been doing a little bit of research, is using AI to help with language translation. And so especially for organizations that have people who do not have English as their first language, for example, or if you're a multi-global organization and you have people in all different parts of the world, that can be a way where I'm just thinking that's going to be more and more in the future where, we'll be in Slack or in Microsoft Teams, we'll type something in English, it'll pop out on the other end in a different language. Obviously, there's going to probably be mistakes along the way, so we'll have to deal with that. But I think that's going to be more and more prevalent in the future. And so we'll see things like that being built in further as we use this continuously.
I did that for my employee handbook because
you did?
we
Amazing.
just hit like 10 people in Quebec, and so we needed to change it to French. And so I put it into, again, tried to synthesize or take out as much as possible, but put it into the ChatGPT and it got French done. I had a native French speaker look it over, but
That's
she
a
was like,
great
"It's
example.
pretty good," I would have taken hours to do it otherwise, and I don't speak French, so.
I like that we got to a good place here, right? At this point, we would like to open up for questions. And really on any aspect, something we covered, something we didn't cover, something you're thinking about, something you're horrified about.
Over there.
Yes, sir, second row. Oh, wait, we're going to get you a mic.
I can be very loud.
No,
Yeah,
we
we
got
like the
people
mics.
online.
Second row.
Second row. Yeah, there you go. I'm really curious about this transparency policy, sort of companies being transparent about what they are doing with AI. And I'm wondering about applicants. Do you see any trend where applicants are sending in letters, let's say, or resumes, and it says, AI didn't touch my resume, like this is all me?
I haven't seen one yet, but I would be intrigued by that as well. And like, would I, as a recruiter, then put it through ChatGPT and be like, did ChatGPT write this? Who knows, right? That would be interesting. I don't know if it would, for me, I'm not sure it would be a positive though, because then what am I judging it on basically? Like okay, you didn't use ChatGPT, so this is just all your natural ability of writing, which is great, but how long did it take you? I think I'd have more questions almost.
So I'd have to write out a thing. I didn't use ChatGPT and I did it really fast. Right,
So many
got it.
caveats, I don't know.
All right, I love it. Thank you.
In my organization, we're involved in a lot of hiring, right? And the first thing it says, it may shock you, but candidates are not always honest in their applications and interviews, right? So, I think if a candidate said they did or didn't, it's almost like a kind of irrelevant bit of information, right? We're hiring you to do a specific job. Hopefully we have experts on our team who could evaluate your resume and the candidate in the interview process, and they'll be looking for the true indicators of performance in that role, which maybe the role is all about AI, and so maybe using it or not using it would be super important. But I think in a lot of roles, it's not as important in the application process as it might seem.
Just to pile on that, I was going to say it's almost the output is more interesting, whether or not the person used AI. We've had some examples where somebody will put together a whole strategy deck or a Figma design, and if they tell us or they don't tell us, if they used AI, I'm less concerned. It's just, is it a good product and outcome? And if it's great and they used AI, awesome. They had a good kind of judgment and assessment of that. And if they didn't, and they did a great job without it, also great. But I do think the honesty of just kind of, sharing in the conversation if they used it, but really the outcome is the most important.
Maybe there's a dimension though if they used AI and they got it even worse, and that's what they submitted. That would be a bad indicator, I suppose.
Totally.
Who else do we got?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a consultant and I work with startups, but I've just recently added some clauses to my basic contract about the use of AI, and to be transparent and actually to start the conversation with clients about whether they want me to use it or not, and also just data protections and stuff. But my advice to all of them has been to the little box that says the terms and conditions, and who's going to read that? Well, who can read that is ChatGPT can read it and tell me what are my exposures here, what are my concerns, and they've really customers have really appreciated that, because they look in and they say, I really should buy the paid version, shouldn't I? Because if I don't, it's all going to be public. And also for Copilot and for Google, all of those terms and conditions. Put them through the AI itself, put the LLM, and it'll tell you what your exposures are. So.
Hey, this is Rakesh Banka.
You're next, back there. Yeah. Go ahead.
I see two issues in hiring. Number one is we hire with rear view mirror. We hire with what a person has done rather with the potential.
Can you put a little closer?
Yeah, we hire with what a person has done rather with the potential. Number two, we hire for skills rather than behaviors and values and leadership, etc. I think AI will make it even worse, because then we will be basically looking at the data behind and not on the leadership potential, etc. And I think that is going to impact the whole industry. We have been impacted by that quite a lot. Our leadership skill, in my opinion, as an industry, has come down. We have become more managerships, less leadership. So what's your thought process? In the future, how do we increase leadership? How do we hire people for potential?
I think, again, it just goes back to how we make these choices, right? So if we, as an organization, want to focus on, as you said, the leadership potential versus, looking in the past at what people have done, then the organization has to make real concrete choices that translate down, all the way down into, step one from hiring somebody, in terms of what considerations are used and what is weighted heavier or less. So that's where, again, the human element is so important, because every organization is going to define what that looks like differently, but it comes back to the choice that we make. And so a lot of times I think when we talk about AI, it feels like this runaway train that we've got to sort of hop on and hang on for dear life. But the reality is that, yes, there is an element of it where we are out of control to a certain extent, but in a space of a company, your team, how you choose to lead or manage, that is where we do have control, and that is where we get to make those kinds of choices. And there is no guidebook quite just yet, so it's still pretty open at this point.
So my question is, I'm a co-founder right now building a SaaS solution, and we started to get some angel investment. We're going to start working with potentially, hopefully, VCs soon. The question that I have is, you're seeing a lot of these unicorn companies and really big companies, very lean teams. I'm going to give Lovable, because I think most people know what Lovable is. That's the new unicorn company.
How lean are they?
I think they only have 30 people. It's crazy. So a lot of these unicorn companies are very, very lean, and that's the space I'm in. And there's something that me and my co-founder kind of lose sleep over, because we really believe in people. And the whole point of what we're building is to have humans work with what we're building, is the team internally. So obviously we know that the only reason we've gotten investment and even interest is because of how strong our team is. We're a team of 3 people right now with a really strong CTO who builds in the AI space. He's really, really sharp. And I think the thing that kind of concerns me is the balance between keeping our potential angel, and it's a very loaded question, our investors happy, because it's what Jen said. They think, oh, well, AI can do it. And then you get into this like kind of argument, because even from a headcount perspective, like our financial model, so I'm getting into really the details here. And I'm sure, Jen, you're experiencing that, is that you have your board of directors and the people that are investing, and they expect a pretty lean model, because right now you're seeing a bunch of unicorn companies popping up left and right that literally have like 10 people building it. Now, I don't know if that's sustainable or if that's just like the trend right now, but I guess how are you guys handling that, keeping your board of directors and your investors happy with the way that you're scaling the team? I mean, it's a loaded question, right? People, process, product, but like it like kind of keeps me up. My brain kind of spins a bit, because if you hire too slowly, you get penalized. If you hire to overhire, that's a problem. So yeah, I guess if you guys have any like insights on that.
So one thing that we're also doing is conducting a right people, right seats for everyone, because we were 50 people like 2.5 years ago. We were tiny, and we're 226 now. Like we've exploded, right? And a lot of the things that we've done have been because we've hired as many people as we did. However, some of the people have been with us for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and those people are probably not the right skill set for what we need in the future. And so it's kind of a pivotal point for us. So it's not just about AI, it's actually the skills that we have now, are they going to get us to where we need to go? So I think AI can be a data point in there, like how can this person, leverage their role, or maybe make the things that they do, the tasks that they need to do faster. That's a part of it. But then the other side is this even the right person for you to have at your company? We're going through a lot of that right now, where my CEO will be like, could they do this with AI? And it's a tough one, but it's going to take a lot of balance. And I think the thing that he has to realize, and kind of the thing that I'm trying to bring, is that perspective of, yes, they can probably do some of it with AI. Where's your trust in the leader that they're leading their side well enough? And I think that when he questions the AI side of it the most, it's usually when potentially maybe there's not as much trust there. Because I think you still have to give your department heads and your leaders that autonomy to build their teams.
Hey everyone, my name is Andre. I'm running a marketing agency, and I actually have 2 questions. So one of them would be, how do you deal with people retention, especially if you want them keep like for super long period of time? And the second one, when we are hiring new folks, like outreach specialists, we have one of the steps in the process of hiring people is to a technical assignment. Nowadays, with the help of AI, everyone just copy pasting everything. So what's your approach to technical assignment in the era of AI? We've did, like some changes and some closed questions already, but that's not helping, and we still see that people copy pasting. So what's your approach on this?
So we got the compound question here. So we'll start with number one. Number one, I believe, was basically you're saying, how do you retain people? Or are you saying, how do you retain people with AI?
Yeah, like with the help of AI, I would say.
Okay, yeah. Any takers here?
I go back to, this is another book rec, Daniel Pink's book Drive, and it's all about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I go back to those with AI or without AI. If you give people autonomy, if they can master whatever they're working on and there's purpose, they will stay there. AI could probably accelerate in certain areas. It actually may take away in some areas, but I think if you can hit autonomy, mastery, purpose at scale, you'll retain. So that's bucket one. Pause there.
Okay, yes. It's also important to be reality facing, right? If you have a retention problem, you got to be like, how are we failing as a company that people don't want to stay here, right? Your second question was about coding. If I understand it correctly, was it specifically about software interviews that are almost of no value today if everybody who you administer it to can easily cheat on it within seconds? Is that your question?
Yeah, but like in the marketing field.
So within marketing, there are some type of exercise that you may have someone.
Yes, yeah.
Got it.
I almost would put it back to you as a question of the role that they're going to be doing. Can they leverage the same skills? Like what's the outcome? I think Jason mentioned this in one of his first points, but if they can do it all with AI and the outcome's going to be the same as with or without, do you care if they used it? Or are you finding that the person that's using AI, you had them in the seat now and they're just a horrible employee? So which one are you, well, like which one are you in?
Yeah, so we're just seeing that a lot of people just doing copy paste. They're okay with usage of AI, and it's it's crucial nowadays to use it because better professional. But they just simply copy pasting like our question, and like we see even patterns like I don't know in cohort of 40 people, and kind of half of them like have similar answers like without even like the edit touch. So that's an issue, and like probably have to create such I don't know technical assignment test tasks that will be impossible to just copy paste and insert info into AI.
Anything that you can do on pairing instead to see kind of their collaboration in real time?
Yeah, like we've did some pair interviews, and that's kind of helped us. We've spent I don't know a bit more time on our side, but we were happy with the results because we see that the person like how they think, how they solve the issues and questions we were asking them. But again, it's super time consuming, and for one parent session, like we need around like 2 hours approximately, and like on a huge scale, it's kind of impossible like to have per interview with everyone. So there should be something in the middle probably.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's not working for you, then maybe you don't do technical interviews like that anymore. Like that's the reality, is that with the prevalence and the increase of AI usage, we're going to have to change. So what worked in the past is not going to continue to work in the future. So if you're saying that, hey, these technical interviews are garbage because everyone just copy pastes it, then I think Jen's question was right on around how can you what are you hoping to learn and how else can you get there? And maybe it's a different question that you need to start asking. And it sounds like maybe the pair interview is not the right question. So there's a different question that you need to start asking. That technical interviews is just not it anymore.
One second. There is some emergent guidance on this topic, right? So one thing that you can consider is to redesign your technical interview to make it more difficult in certain ways than you would have practically been able to do in the past. Furthermore, you ask the candidate to document the prompts that they used. So now you're seeing how they performed, you're seeing how they thought, because their thinking influenced the prompt, but you've basically said now you have to use AI, right? But if someone wants to take on this challenging thing without it, that would also be impressive. So I believe this is like modern guidance on this. You're welcome.
Can we use a microphone? Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
We try to go in order in which the questions were asked. I want to give everybody the mic. I really do. We've got about 2 more minutes left before I need to wrap up for 60 seconds. We're going to let this gentleman who's had his hand raised for quite some time ask it super fast. Panelists, do your best. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you guys so much. This has been like super informational. So just to end on, I'd say over the last year or so, recruiters using AI has gone from almost like cheat mode into intentional and now an internal initiative. And the most recent step lately has been like a public-facing transparency about how recruiting teams are using AI, and even further, how candidates should use AI to interact with a recruiting team. So Perplexity a few weeks ago put out a great blog post about specifically how their TA team uses AI like throughout their recruiting process, and how candidates like should and should not use it. And then Zapier did a similar blog post about how they're evaluating like internal teams on their AI usage. So the question is, what do you think about that? Like, where's your organization in terms of, is it a full initiative internally? How do you feel about, promoting externally or to the public that your team does use AI, and in what way? And would you recommend that for, a startup?
I mean, we have the AI statement, how we use it on our careers site. It's in actually every job description. I can't take credit for it. We modeled it after Help Scouts because it was so beautifully written. But we wanted to make sure that we were very open with our candidates about how they use AI and how we can use AI too.
Yeah, for us, we don't have a statement as of yet, but I love that idea. And so I'm going to actually take that back to my org, which is, again, pretty small. So it'll happen because I'm one of the major decision makers. And I think that's a great way to go forward. The reality is that, no one has specifically asked us, but if they did, we would be very upfront about it. In my org, we use it primarily for building like training flows and helping with structuring, like I mentioned, like outlines and things like that. We also use it for blog post writing, and we use it for note taking, and tools like Zoom have the AI companion enabled. That's been really helpful, and so that's pretty visible because they do have that little button that turns on when you use it. So it's not a secret, but it's a great question, and I think personally we'll be a bit more transparent going forward because we're not ashamed of it, but it is a tool that we're using.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is Dharmesh, one of the founders of HubSpot, about 2 weeks ago, put a poll out on LinkedIn. And his question was, I hope I don't butcher this, it was, how do you compete with AI? And the question was, when people look at that one simple question, how do you compete with AI? Do you interpret the with against AI, or do you interpret the with as using AI? And I think for us, for internally, there's a mindset shift of we want people competing using AI and not being against it. And once we get that cultural fabric down, then we can put policies in place, et cetera. But that is just a human kind of shift in terms of, is this a negative thing or is this a positive thing?
I know there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of feedback, a lot of questions. I want to thank you all for staying so engaged and give a huge, huge round of applause to our wonderful panelists. Fantastic session. Second row, nice clap, second row. We have a lot more in store, both for today and for the rest of the week. There are a lot of side events going on throughout the city tonight, so definitely check them out using the link in the Slack channel. We also have the Massachusetts Climate Tech Studio Finale Showcase happening this evening right here at Suffolk. We know that you want to mingle after the event. Highly encourage it. The only thing that I ask is that you please do not do it in this room, or I will be forced to kindly ask you to leave. No. Even if your next session is here, though, just step out so that I may reset the room. You can recheck in with the registration desk. Virtual listeners, don't go anywhere. Just select your next session. We'll be back shortly. Lastly, we have a wonderful photography crew on site. Kevin Ty from 3 Circles Studio is our official photographer. So grab him for a photo. You'll get a personalized Startup Boston Week photo album. I'm trying to go fast because I know we're over on time. You'll be able to look back on it all year round. If you have not yet already, I do have the QR code right here. You can scan it, get your own personalized photo album. Awesome for LinkedIn. I love all of the support that everybody has already started posting. Thank you so much for that. And see you at the next session.